In this lesson, we're going to talk about finding our balance between standing firm, holding our ground, defending our boundaries, and yet doing good unto all people and being gentle and kind and compassionate. So we have Galatians 6:10 where Paul says, do good unto all men, especially the household of faith. But we also have Paul saying, fight the good fight of faith. And so the question becomes, is Paul contradicting himself? Then we have like Jude 3 where he said, contend earnestly for the faith. So all of these are scripture, all from the same book, interestingly enough, all from the Bible, of course. So how do we stand firm in our faith without losing our compassion, or our gentleness and our kindness? That's a dilemma. That's a lot of people really, really struggle with that one, how to disagree in an agreeable manner. So let's go and see what we can figure out here. So he says, this is the good side, we'll call it. Do good to all people, Galatians 6:10. So we always want to show kindness and respect to the people we're talking to, even when they have different ideas than what we have, because that's the way life works. You know, it's kind of sad that on Facebook and a lot of social media, people forget that. People think since there's this, I don't know what to call the space between them, screens, I guess we'll say, they can be ugly on Facebook. No, you can't. That's not Christian. So Jesus, when he went about doing all the things that he did, and he had to deal with the Pharisees and other false doctrines, I don't recall him ever being rude or hateful or arrogant. Now we know he had the backbone. He knew how to stand up, but I wouldn't put it in these negative ways whatsoever. And we'll talk about having the backbone in just a moment. So when Jesus came across Zacchaeus, now most folks wouldn't have touched Zacchaeus with a 10-foot pole. They wouldn't have gotten near him. All they wanted to do is harass, ridicule, mock, make fun of him. And Jesus says, come down from that tree because I'm going to your house today. Now, how does that make you feel? Think about that for a second. How do you think Zacchaeus felt? I think he probably felt like, are you kidding me? Nobody ever treats me nice. You're treating me nice? I think it just probably rattled his cage in a really good way. Or how about everyday life? You know, how are we going to make this Zacchaeus thing look? How can we be disagreeable in agreeable manner? And incidentally, I do believe this is an art that our modern society has absolutely lost. I think if you go back a generation or two, they had a better ability to talk across the fences, so to speak, without getting ugly and hateful and mean-spirited about it. And nowadays, people, they're like, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. No, there's something to learn from everybody. Even if they're wrong, I think you can still learn some stuff that will help you in your moving forward. So what I would suggest to you is use disagreement as an opportunity. Now, here's the trick, in my opinion, is you need to learn to ask the right questions. So there are questions that you can ask that are mean-spirited, and they're meant to set the other person up for a fall, and you're just trying to manipulate it like a chess game so you can finally get to the end and go, ha, checkmate, gotcha. Okay, that's not going to work. Don't do that. I mean, you're going to ask questions, but ask questions to explore. Ask questions to figure out where you come from? How did you arrive at that? What was your path to the position you're in now? I want to understand what you're thinking and how you got to where you are. Because in that, depending on the subject, you may learn something you didn't understand before, or you may see the fatal flaw in their reasoning and be able to point it out. But once it becomes a shoving match, it's over. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I love that little saying. And so when it starts becoming a shoving match, it's done. Ain't nobody going to change anything because they've already planted their feet and they're determined they're right, even if they're wrong. But I can't be wrong because I know I'm right and I know you're wrong. And all reasoning's gone out. Now, if you can keep it at what I would call more of a scientific research project without getting all up in your feelings and going, okay, this is a different idea than I've heard before. Let's explore that. And if you can keep that idea of exploration, now you can probably go somewhere. Not in every case, but I think your odds are much better there. So we want to do good unto all people. Then Paul would say in 2 Timothy 2:24 that the Lord's bondservant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to all, able to teach, patient when wrong, with gentleness correcting. And then the verse goes on from there. I'll let you read it later. So this is easier said than done, because one of the first things that happens in so many cases is ego hops up. Oh, he or she thinks I'm wrong. And ego jumps right in the middle of it and says, I'm going to show them I'm not wrong. Now, wait a minute. Isn't it pretty arrogant to think I could not be wrong on any topic I hold a position on? That I'm absolutely correct. In every position I hold, I am correct. I don't think that's true. I think there are positions we may hold, ideas we may hold, and we're not as sure of them as we would like to think. Sometimes we're just parroting other than really knowing why we believe what we believe. What we want to do is be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. We want to get back to that book, chapter, and verse foundation. And I've heard many people say it 100 times, if you can show me where I'm wrong, I'll gladly change. I think that's really a good attitude. If what you're believing is not really in line with the scriptures, it's time to change. And if I refuse to change when I've been shown the scriptures, maybe I'm not as sincere as I thought I was. So we're going to let our light shine in Matthew 5:16, and we're going to be gentle and patient and kind and all of that stuff. But now, on the flip side, we don't go with the flow. We were told to fight the good fight. We were told to contend earnestly for the faith. I mean, this is all the same Bible. All of this is New Testament so far. So we have to defend our boundaries, right? And we've got to protect our sheep. There's no question about that. So you got some borders set. This is what we believe. This is why we believe it. And we're not just going to let anybody run over it and go, no, we don't like where you set your boundaries. We're going to change your boundaries for you. We're trying to find those boundaries God set, book, chapter, and verse, right? And once we think we've got them, we're going to hang on to them really tight till you show me some really good stuff to the contrary. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to make a distinction. I hope this will help you in maintaining a good communicative style. Not everybody who disagrees with you is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay? There are some people that disagree with you just because they were raised differently. They didn't get to pick which family they would be raised in. They were just born there. I was born into a Southern Baptist family. That's just how it worked out, right? And so that's what I thought. That was the way it worked. My grandmother just happened to be Assembly of God on the other side of the family, and that's just the way she thought. Those were the ideas that were instilled in her and her youth. There's a difference between the wolf in sheep's clothing that I'm coming in to destroy you and rip you apart and take your salvation away from you and all that mean, ugly stuff, and the person who's just learning. This is just where I started out in life. I don't know it all yet. I'm on a journey and I'm learning. So if I recognize a person as a wolf, and there are wolves out there, you keep your guard up really, really, really good. But also recognize the difference between this person is not a wolf. They were just raised different than I. They come from a different experience than I. And this is a person that we need to talk with. And they need to talk with us. And we need to get back to book, chapter, and verse. We need to dig into it. And on the wolves, I want to also add not just individuals, but you watch for Hollywood, because Hollywood has a social agenda and they're out there to push their social agenda. If you look at social media, you'd think like 80% of the American population was homosexual. That's not true. It's single digit. But the social media has an agenda. You get into social media, you get groups that have their agenda. You get into liberal colleges, you have people that have their agenda. So understand that a wolf in sheep's clothing is not just a specific individual, but it can also be an ideology. It can be a philosophy. Paul would talk in Colossians 2:8. See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the traditions of men, according to the elementary principles of the world, rather than according to Christ. What we're trying to do is get back, I say book, chapter, and verse, we're trying to get back on that spiritual basis. We don't care what modern philosophy says. Modern philosophy can be interesting. It can be really convoluted and crazy. I don't care. Give me some Bible. Open it up. Let's look at some ink on the page. And even when we narrow it down there, just to this book, there's still a lot of discussion to be had. A lot. And so I don't need to go off into philosophy and empty deceit and all that stuff. So we don't go with the flow, but at the same time, we got to stand. We're going to be good to all men, but we don't go into hiding. And that's what some people do. That's their mistake. They realize, well, I'm just going to hide in the corner. I had a lady tell me once, many years ago, she said, I don't talk to anybody about the gospel because I'm afraid I'll tell them the wrong thing and they'll go to hell. And she thought she was telling me something really noble. I wish I'd had a little more fast thought on my feet. I'm like, but if you don't talk to them at all, they're going to go to hell too, right? Hmm. But some people just want to hide in the corner and go, well, I just won't deal with any issues. No, as Christians, we don't get that option. We're to be salt. We're to be light. There was a book title I read a long, long, long time ago. We're going back 40 years ago. Didn't read the book. I just read the title. And the title was Out of the Salt Shaker. And that's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be salt out of the salt shaker. So if I may, by way of analogy, we're in the salt shaker right now. This is okay. We're supposed to assemble together. But we need to get out of the salt shaker and be out there in our own little corners of the world. We'll do a zone defense, be in our zone, being salt and light. We have not been given the option to hide our light under a bushel. So what you have to do is you have to know why you believe what you believe. You really, really got to know this stuff. I mean, it can't just be parroting the preacher and imitating what you've heard. You really got to know your stuff. And then just in your own little corner of the world, just do your little part. We're not asking you to go convert the whole state or the nation or anything. Just let your light shine where you live your life. In the daily routine, I like to say mundane lately, don't I? In the daily routine of your life. And then you'd be ready to make a defense to everyone asked you to give an account for the hopes in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Now, I think I said this last week, but let's repeat it. You are not required to convert everybody you talk to. You're required to make a defense. Why do y'all believe this or that? Well, the reason we do what we do, and then I explain to you why I believe it. Now, you may go, hey, that's a good idea. You may go, no, I don't agree with that. Okay, that's your business. I did what I was told to do. I was told, and you're told, make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hopes in you. So here's what I believe. Here's why I believe it. You can take it or you can leave it. I'd like to have a discussion about it. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But my simple part is not that I'm accountable. And so I tell somebody why I believe whatever I believe. I'm like book, chapter, and verse. Let's get back to New Testament Christianity, and let's get out all the man-made changes and stuff like that. And I show that to somebody, and they go, no, I don't care for that. Did I lose? That depends on what your expectation was. I did not lose. I won. I won because I did what God expected me to do. Make a defense to everyone who asked you for the hope that was in you. He did not say you are responsible to convert everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that's in you. He did not say you're responsible for the decision somebody else makes. He said you go sow the seed. Did you sow the seed? You won, as far as God's concerned. Because the individual has free moral agency, and he or she can decide what they want to do with that seed. And if you use the parable of the sower, out of the 4 examples, how many of them actually grew? One of them. The other 3 didn't make it. So what I rationalize from there is that most of the seed I sow will not grow. Most of the seed I sow is going to fall on soil that just can't do it. But I don't count myself a loser. I did my part. I sowed the seed. I gave an answer for the hope that was in me. And now I'm a winner. But see, we get mixed up there. And so if I think I'm losing, and we hate to lose, don't we? Then it's going to get even worse because I think I'm losing. I'm going to push a little harder. And I think I'm losing. I'm going to shout a little louder. I think I'm losing. I'm going to get a little bit more intense because I just know because I'm a guy and we just like to hit it harder and harder. I just know if I bang on you hard enough, eventually you'll give in. No, that's not what we want. We don't want to beat someone into submission. We want to win them over so that they fall in love with God with all their heart, with all their soul. So the goal is not to beat people down. The goal is to give them an answer for the hope that's in you. Give that answer. What they do with it's their business. So I hope to win them over. Absolutely, I hope to win them over. I hope we get to the end of our discussion, whether it's just 10 minutes or it's 3 or 4 days or weeks, and finally we go, hey, I get it. Yeah, I like that idea. That feels good too. But let me back you up because I know what we're thinking. Okay, now I really won. No, you won when you did 1 Peter 3:15. That's when you won. You won when you did Matthew, or so let me use Mark 16, 15, and 16. Go in the world, preach the gospel to every creature. That's when you won. That's the part you did. Now, whether they want to believe and be baptized, that's their choice. But if we keep thinking, I got to convert everybody, then we just made our Savior quite the loser. Did Jesus convert everybody? Nope. Are you going to call Jesus a loser? I'm not. And if you're not going to call Jesus a loser for someone rejecting his message, why would you call yourself a loser for someone rejecting the same message Jesus got rejected? So much of it's just your perspective, isn't it? It's kind of crazy. But that will help you keep your balance. That will help you keep from getting all up in your feelings, as we say. So we live in this wonderful multicultural world, and I do think it's wonderful because of the internet. We have global connection with so many things, and things are easily available today. Man, if you wanted to learn some things back in the 70s, you had to go to the library. And if you wanted to take the book home, you had to have a library card. And if you kept the book too long, you had to pay a library fine. The young people are going, what? No, that's the way it really worked. That was the 70s, you know. And we also had the card catalog. I would love to take your average 15-year-old into a card catalog now and say, okay, go find the book I want. Here's the card catalog. Wouldn't that be totally fun? Anyway, so we have all this wonderful information available. I think it's really good. The goal is to wisely navigate it. It's out there. I think you need to know the schemes of the devil. Paul would say the same thing over in 2 Corinthians 11. We need to know what the opposition's doing. If you're going to be wise as a serpent, you got to know. But the goal is not to belittle the other side. I don't care who you're dealing with. I know some people, I was raised Southern Baptist, and for some reason the Catholics were just horrible, horrendous, monstrous people, at least in the little section where I grew up. And there was nothing nice ever said about them. Well, I don't agree with Catholicism. I'm clear about that. But my goal is not to belittle a Catholic or insult a Catholic or to be intolerant. Now, I get they won't like everything I have to say. Just because my position is unpleasant to them doesn't mean I've been insulting to them. Does that make sense? So you don't have to like everything I say, but when I do say something you disagree with, I can still be kind and gentle and polite. And those, so the goal here is just stay grounded in your Bible, know the book, read the book, keep studying the book, and be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. And this is such great wisdom. I'm going to repeat the point I said a second ago. Once you get in a shoving match, you're done. Especially if it's two men. It's over. Because men are not going to back down. They're going to take that shoving match all the way to the tombstone. I'll guarantee you it's a rare man that will ever back down once he's been shoved. Don't even let it get there. Don't even let it get there. They say something you don't understand or it's overwhelmed you or it's brand new to you, just go, wow, that's interesting. I'm going to have to think about that a while. Well, I think that's wise. If you really don't understand what they're saying and it is the first time you've ever heard it, should you just jump on it as though you understood everything? Or say, let me think on that. We'll get back on that one later. The great physician, he came to seek and save the lost. If we walk with Jesus, what do? We came to seek and save the lost. not to beat them up, not ridicule them, not make fun of them. So you gotta know your truth. Now, don't just parrot the truth. This is one of the problems, is a lot of people know some things to parrot. Well, my preacher said, okay, that's a start. But do you really know why he said it? Do you really understand what's behind it? I get a whole 30 minutes tops in the pulpit. It takes up to 8 hours to prepare for this 30 minutes. There's a lot behind it. And until you start understanding at that deeper level, it's just milk. Nothing wrong with milk if you're a babe, but you don't want to just be parroting stuff, because when what you parrot is challenged, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't know now. uh, what's the next thing? I don't know. I feel insecure. Now I'm going to get mad and get loud and start pushing. And it just messes things up. So you're going to be those kind of people that examine the scriptures daily to see whether these things were so. So nothing wrong with disagreement. Nothing wrong with having a Bible study and going, hey, let's figure this out. And doing that's exactly what the Bereans did, and they were complimented for examining the scriptures daily. But notice it didn't say they just read the scriptures really quick and checked off the box. They examined the scriptures. They were digging into some depth. So it's not just something you read. It's central to life. It's central to your thinking. So we have skimming the surface, and we have going deep. And the problem in churches today is most people don't know how to go deep. Most churches out there in the community, it's all love and fluffy and fuzzy and emotional. Now, there's some that know their Bible, and you better know it when you come up against them. But brethren, even among the churches of Christ, where we used to be called the people of the book, where we used to be called people that follow the Bible. No, a little community, a little church was going to hire a new preacher. It was the denominational church. And they didn't like the preacher that was the candidate. And one of the members stood up and said, if you want to hear the Bible, then go down to the Church of Christ. They'll teach you the Bible. And they're like, well, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? That's quite a compliment, I think. But if you can't go deep, then what we tend to do is substitute emotionalism and anger and pushing and intensity instead of academics. The truth has nothing to fear. The truth's got absolutely nothing to fear. You got to know it. Let me move on. So you want the strength to be kind. We've done this verse already, but let's do it again. The bondservant must not be quarrelsome, but be kind to all, able to teach, patient when wronged, with gentleness correcting those who are in opposition. Now, if you consider yourself to be a Christian, then this is your duty. You're supposed to be gentle. End of story. That's the way it works. Standing firm. We don't want to build walls. What we want to do is build some book, chapter, and verse bridges. And if we can get back to standing on the scripture, which predates me by 2,000 years. How long does it predate you? About 2,000 years, right? So I didn't write the scriptures. And I know whoever I'm talking to did not write the scriptures. That was 2,000 years before any of us got here. The scriptures don't have a bias on our current arguments and positions. So now if we can just get back to the same rule book and we can study that rule book together, we can learn to stand closer and closer together. But it's going to take gentleness, not getting all up in your feelings, to put it in a modern slang. Don't do that. It's hard. I know it's hard, but don't do it. So we're seeking the lost. God didn't send His Son into the world to judge the world, but the world through Him might be saved. That's what He wants, is salvation. So we're walking with Jesus. We're working with Jesus. This is the whole thing. The prodigal's father, this is what we want to do. The prodigal came to his senses. He's coming back. His dad sees him down the road, and Jesus said, the Father, who represents God, ran and threw His arms around him. It wasn't a judgmental, belittling, rude, berating anything. It was a Wonderful time. The woman caught in adultery. I think this is great. You got a woman right dead in the middle of adultery. Should have been executed according to the old law. How bad did Christ berate her? Not at all. You remember the story. He said, "Woman, where are your accusers?" She basically says, "They're gone." And he says, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Man, that's tough. Because the thing that would be so common among people today would be a 30-minute lecture if you were lucky, and it would climb her tree up one side and down the other and rip the bark off as they went. And all Jesus said is, "Go and sin no more." There's our role model. There's our example. Now, there is a time for rebuke. You really, really got to keep that in mind. That it's not a cookie cutter thing. In Titus 1:13, Paul told Titus to rebuke them sharply. Even rebukes, though, need to come across with, you remember how you used to do it when mama, you look back. Now, you don't do this at the time. You did this looking way back. You got the spanking, and you didn't like mama when she gave you the spanking or when daddy gave you the spanking. But many, many, many years later, you go, I deserved every one of them I got. And now I realize mama was just trying to make me grow up to be a man or woman that would be responsible, able to stand on my own 2 feet. Now, that's rebuke. Rebuke has that kind of love behind it. We're just trying to get people on their feet. And there are a few people that just need a sharper tone. But sharper tone doesn't mean we give up kindness and gentleness. That's all the fruit of the Spirit. There are some people that think, if you say something I don't like to hear, you just violated the Scripture. Well, if that's the case, then we better quit talking. Because every sermon and every Bible discussion, we're going to say something somebody else doesn't want to hear or they don't agree with, and they're going to think we're wrong. If that makes us rude and intolerant and mean-spirited, then we can't even talk. But yet we've been sent to talk. Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. So be careful how you divvy up some things there and how you nuance some things. Do absolutely want you to speak the truth in love. We're going to speak the truth, but it's going to be in love. And that's the trick. Truth and love are not in opposition. You can speak the truth, but don't do it as a bully. That's the way some people do it. Well, I'm supposed to tell the truth. I think you're ugly. No, don't do that. Out of the mouth speaks what the heart's filled with. Now, I'm going to do one little quick squirrel chase here. Hurt people hurt people. If you cannot talk about the Bible without hurting someone else, and I'm talking about being mean-spirited, you're the problem. You've got issues you have not unpacked. You've got issues you haven't worked through. Because somebody who's confident and not full of pain and anger and bitterness, they can talk across the fence all day long. They can be polite and they can be courteous and they can actually listen and have that conversation. Out of the heart speaks the mouth. And you just have to look in the mirror and catch yourself on that. So doing good doesn't mean avoiding what's difficult. It means be wise about it. Be pleasant. Do it with love. And like I like to call it, do it like you're two scientists researching something, trying to figure out the answer. So I want you to be alike. And it's not about winning the debate. It's about winning souls. Now, think ahead with me just 1 second. It's not about winning debates. It's about winning souls. If you win the soul, what about the debate? You won that too. Focus on winning souls. And when you win the soul, you won the debate. But if you focus on the debate, it's rare you're ever going to make a change. I like going to debates. I think Bruce Reeves does an excellent job with debates. And he's got them within driving range. I'm going. But I know, because I get to go in some circles that not everybody gets to go into, I have sat across the table from the opposition at one of his debates, but they didn't know I was on Bruce's side because they didn't know who I was from Adam. And they sat there and they talked about the debate they had with Bruce, and they said, "We cleaned his clock. We took him to school." And I thought, that's interesting. I was at that same debate and I had a different feeling about it. Here's the problem when you get into debates. Everybody hears what they want to hear. They assess it how they want to assess it, and they all walk away thinking they won. I don't want to get into debate. I want to win souls because that's what we were called to do. And I know if I win the soul, I got the debate without her having it. And debates are tough. They're hard to win. So tolerance, let me say this, it's not endorsing. It's don't endorse other people's sin, but it's a strategy. Pick your battles at the right time. You're dealing with somebody who's outside your system of belief, your faith system, your ideas, or maybe totally outside of Christianity or whatever. I mean, they're out there. Okay, don't attack everything at once. It's too much, it's too quick, it's not going to work. Pick your battles, work through it. Resist your knee-jerk urges. Do Paul, discipline your body, make it your slave. I got to be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Got some issues we need to deal with here. I think this is the priority one. Let's start here and let's begin working. You pick the priority from the case and stay grounded in the scriptures. And I'm going to emphasize it again. You really got to know why you believe what you believe. You really got to know it. And then you got to be intentionally wise in your approach. And then you got to have a life that kind of backs it up. So this happens. This is so funny. So, the guys are out on the line in the factory and they're talking like guys talk. I will not insult you and try to mimic it. And then it's break time and they head to the break room and they sit down and they try to have a religious discussion. Come on. How much you really buying that? We were just out on the line and I heard every filthy word you said and every nasty thing you talked about. And now you're really going to sit across from the table from me and tell me that I don't understand the Bible? I think I'd like to see a little evidence in your own life first. Let me see your light shining before you start teaching me, schooling me on. Yeah, you got to live consistent with it because this is just the way humanity works. So I want you to be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. I want you to stand your ground. I want you to defend your borders. And I want you to do it with kindness and gentleness and patience. And if you think you're at a time in a situation where a sharp rebuke is necessary, Titus 1:13, just follow this rule of thumb. You're probably not there. If you think this is time to get rebuking, you're probably not. Could be, I don't know, case by case basis. But the tendency of a man is I hit it, that didn't work. Let me hit harder. Let me hit harder. That ain't gonna work. I'm sorry, we're dealing with hearts. It's not going to work. But if you're going to learn this, it's going to work more often than what you might expect. Okay, starts with lining up with Christ. You got to be in the faith. You got to be in the straight and narrow to start with. And anybody wants to can be part of Christ's family. As we're getting ready to sing, whosoever will, it's open. I know we're coming back to that book, chapter, and verse foundation. If you've not yet been baptized into Christ, our baptistry is somewhat ready. If you've wandered away and feel you need to make public confession, or if you just need to do something privately, you'd like to talk to one of the elders, we're here to help you however we can. All together we stand and sing.